This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
You are now listening to Vigilantes Radio, presented by the only one media group. This is the people's choice for quality interviews, celebrities, and special guests. Hosted by Demetrius Reynolds. Call in to join the mix at 701-801-9813. For the complete archive of episodes, visit onlyonemediagroup.com and be sure to like us on Facebook at Vigilantes Radio. We welcome all. Enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Demetrius Whodini Blak Reynolds. Enjoy the show.
Hello, beautiful people, and good afternoon. It is Saturday, and all is whole or well on this side of the spectrum here. Everything is wonderful, no complaints, and I just want to welcome you guys to the show. You are listening to Vigilantes Radio live right here on iHeart Radio, and I am your host, Whodini. I do have to say that this particular episode is pre-recorded, and I can't wait to deliver it to your inboxes. And for you guys who subscribe to the show, you'll be the first to know, and I always appreciate that. All right, I do want to say, don't lose sight. This is the frequency of the fearless. There is a kind of silence most people avoid. Not the silence of a quiet room, but the silence where you meet yourself. No distractions, no noise, no performance, just truth. And for many, that kind of silence feels uncomfortable because it asks questions we don't always want to answer. Who are you when nothing is pulling at your attention? What do you believe when no one is watching? What remains when everything else fades? But for some, silence isn't something to escape. It's something to enter, to sit in, to grow in, to become something deeper through. Tonight's conversation, or this afternoon's conversation, moves differently. This isn't about speed. This isn't about hype. This isn't about chasing attention. This is about stillness, about reflection, about the thin line between time and eternity. Because somewhere between a second and forever, there is a space where meaning is found. And not through force, but through presence. You're not just here for a talk show, and this isn't just radio. This is revival for your mind, body, and spirit. This is Vigilantes Radio Live. My name is Coach Whodini, and change is possible. Are you ready?
You're listening to the Vigilantes podcast on iHeart Radio. I'm Mo, founder and owner of Noah Guy Heating and Air Conditioning. We're giving away 12 free HVAC systems this year, and if you or someone you know needs one, apply now at noaguyhvac.com. To grow this mission, we're also seeking sponsors and donations. So let's change lives one system at a time. This is Vigilantes podcast on iHeart Radio.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Well, let's go.
Let's go. What is up, guys? Again, welcome to the show. You're listening to VRL, that is Vigilantes Radio Live, right here on iHeart Radio, and I am your host, Dean. Our interviews are designed to go beyond music, news, books, art, acting, films, technology, education, entrepreneurship, entertainment, spirituality, and sometimes even past that thing that we call the ego. Our interviews are designed to go behind the scenes and into the minds of these brilliant people. The ones who are out there giving it their all for me, for you, and for the world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is Father David Jones. He is an author and poet whose work is shaped by decades of silence, prayer, and monastic life. Having spent years in a monastery in France, His writing explores the profound mysteries of the soul, time, and eternity. Through his trilogy, he invites readers into a slower, deeper experience of faith reflection. His words do not rush, they revealed. So please join me in saying welcome, friend, to Father David Jones. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the show.
I'm well. Now, how are things at your end of the planet?
My end of the planet is pretty good. No complaints. I think it's lovely.
Now, over to you.
Yep. So, David, welcome to the show, man. What's been on your heart and mind lately?
Well, being a hermit, one lives a bit outside the planet looking on. It's a calm sort of way of passing through existence.
Just passing through existence?
A calm sort of way, because one looks basically above what's going on in the immediate, in the sense that one is outside time a little bit.
Yeah, we are definitely, well, I can just say it's a time to be alive right now. There is so much going on, and the only thing you can control is how you react to certain things, and just your response to how things affect you, things around you. All right, so when people encounter your work years from now, what do you hope they come to understand about the relationship between silence, faith, and the human soul?
There are certain constants in the equation. One generation can talk to the next, and one soul can talk to another soul, even when that soul has gone on, because there are certain things that a soul can leave, and the classic way of doing it is putting it on the page. Now, of course, there are other means as well, storing voices, but nevertheless, the ancient means of communication, bits of soul to bits of future soul, is through what is put down on paper, on papyrus, parchment, whatever it might be, but nothing has changed in that. In other words, we're still listening and feeling those who have gone before us through the silent page they left behind. So in that sense, writing, if one chisels things into a form which can be looked at again with joy, is something that one leaves behind and leaves a little grace, perhaps for others to pick up way down the line.
Yeah, how can you look at things with the joy, even if the things in the past are painful?
Yeah, one has to look on with a certain philosophic mode onto passing things, including pain. One can be conquered by pain which is physical or pain which is spiritual, human, moral, psychological. But if we pass through life in such a way that we're not conquered, we can, as it were, get above that level. That is only really possible with divine grace, because otherwise the danger is that humanity will be damaged by the immediate. If one is living a little bit bathed in that Trinitarian presence, it's a little bit different, because one sees there's another power in control, and a wisdom which allows things, which we call divine providence, which, as we know from what was given to us way back, where somebody, the first person ready to write in modern English of some sort, was our own hermit Julian of Norwich, way back in the Middle Ages, a recluse. And she was given to understand by the Lord that there's a providence which guides the world. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. And by that, she was given to understand that nothing at all happened without divine permission, that it was pushing things towards our good, pulling good even out of what is apparent harm. So in that case, one can calmly accept the divine will as it comes through divine permissions, and go into what the Lord is trying to say in that, and be positive rather than negative. The only real tragedy is to lose one's soul.
Yes, that is the tragedy. But what if someone doesn't have access to this eternal grace, or isn't aware that it is even a gift to the human soul?
That is the game of the other guy. I think you know what I mean. The one who lives down there on ground zero or beneath. He wants our soul and he wants our company. So he's very clever at getting it by the immediate. And the immediate isn't all that lasting. People sacrifice the eternal for the sake of the immediate. So that is what is happening. With divine grace, however, it's quite different because one is not living just for the immediate. But your question is quite a poignant question. What does one do if one hasn't got divine grace? Well, it's not so simple. Because as we have in the gospel, actually this weekend, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. It's only through the cross and through divine grace that we can get there. So it's kind of serious if one thinks about what the Lord is trying to warn us about. It's not automatic pie in the sky when we die and all that. We have to kind of get our act together. So people who are not getting their act together are secretly nudged and needled by their conscience. They're not in peace. There's only deep peace when one is in the will of the Savior. Otherwise, it's a kind of a dumbing effect, to dumb down the pain, distract yourself, escape the reality. There's no happiness there. As the Rolling Stones so eloquently put it, I can't get no satisfaction.
Yes, indeed. So, Father David, you've lived in deep solitude. What was the hardest truth you faced in silence?
There is a purifying a journey which happens in solitude, because one, in the initial stages of letting go and having only silence and solitude and only the interior guest, then there's a whole video of one's past that comes up. They say that actually happens at death as well, but all the past comes up. Then things change a little bit and one goes towards the interior guest and one starts to talk a lot to him, in fact only to him, because he's the only one there. And then there's a peace in what he sends us. God is enough. But the other guy and the other stuff that's in there tries to come back to the surface, and it's a continuous battle. But there is a peace and divine will. In fact, there's no deep peace outside it. So if one is in the will of God, then things are pacified on every level. To make your question actually directly relevant to what happened in my case, it was complicated by the fact precisely that I was writing a lot. And in the Carthusians, that wasn't going down well. So I was being told all the time to more or less leave or stop writing. And that was a tension. So there were elements coming in there which were kind of dodgy in the sense that could have been avoided, but it wasn't avoided and it wasn't caught in time. So I had to leave eventually. So that's what happened to me. It ended up okay, because the Bishop of Meath took me in as a hermit, so I'm able to calmly be here on my own. There's a providence in that too.
Yeah, so what about that caused confusion?
It caused confusion because I was getting close to ordination, and I'd studied all those years there in the solitude of France, and I was ready for it, and then all this came to the surface. It was made even more complex by the fact that the Archbishop confirmed in Welsh got involved, and he wrote to the superior of the order itself. So it only made it worse, actually, because when that came to the fore, there was clearly given indication that if that's the case, you have to be leaving. So things happen. But say there's divine permission. One takes even that on board with calm.
So, in all of that silence and all of that discipline, even through the confusion, what does eternity feel like to you now?
Well, in the purely eremitic life, one is pretty close to eternity in the sense that a lot of one's time is spent, in my case, before the Blessed Sacrament. That's actually one advantage over being a Carthusian. If one is a hermit under the bishop, and if the bishop is supportive, one has access to the Blessed Sacrament, one has one's own chapel, one can expose the Blessed Sacrament a lot, day and night, and be in adoration, and the chanting of the office. I still chant the office completely as it was in the monastery itself, only different tones. So that's completely sung. A high proportion is spent before the Creator, the Maker, the King. And in that sense, there's a deep peace, because when one is before the Lord in chapel with the angels, one is not alone. And how many angels there adoring with one. It's very peaceful. One comes into a cushion of prayer and presence, a double presence, the presence of the Lord, the presence of his angels. One is not alone at all, especially in the night. One feels it in the depths of night when the world is fast asleep. One is a little beacon of light awake, trying to keep the world from going into utter and complete darkness and suicide and all that goes with it in the hours of night.
Indeed. Has silence ever refused to give you an answer?
Ironically, one gets used to silence in such a way that it becomes difficult to break it, because the mode of being in perpetual silence is that one then goes completely into another direction, not towards human beings, but towards the inner guest. And talking then is kind of a portal which leaks. It lets out the interior of the soul. Conversation can be kind of very distracting. Actually, quite ironic, but in the Carthusian order, there is the discipline of the weekly walk as a safety valve. But in one's weekly confession, nearly all the sins that one is confessing are from those moments of talking with other people, because everything else is kind of invisible. And that's where all the leakage happens. And also, one talks about one's past. So if one isn't talking at all the past goes away. One just is present with the Lord, and one doesn't have to talk about one's interior being to anyone at all. Only the Lord knows one's secrets. One is completely hidden, anonymous, and passing through this existence without drawing attention to oneself or being known by anybody. It's a different way of going through life.
There is an idea of time versus eternity that is central to your work. When did you first become aware of this correlation or tension, if we can call it that?
1 minute after entering Carthusians, there one leaves the world and the world doesn't come back, because one is very much separated from the world. And remember, a life without talking, without telephone, without internet, without anything at all with regard to contact with the world is pretty different, and therefore one is, as it were, outside the world already with 1 foot in the beyond. It's a very different world, really, because one's friends there are the invisible friends, the angels and the saints, and therefore, to answer your question, one becomes immediately aware of the difference. The strict monastic life, the strict one now, as it is tacitly lived, does place one completely in a different atmosphere and world.
Yes. Can we talk about the monastic life a little bit deeper, and how you were able to develop your poetry out of that?
Now, that's the irony of it. What happened in my case anyway was, with the silence, there was a time when I was alone all the time, basically. And so I started to put down my thoughts. But now, being Welsh, that would be in a very strict bardic mode. Now, Wales stands out a bit in culture insofar as, because of the Eisteddfod. Now, the Eisteddfod is the great annual competition with all the greatest bards competing in very, 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 very strict metre in Welsh, and very strict rhymes. It's extremely complex. That has been maintained in Wales, and so in Wales, poetry means strict metre. So from the beginning, I've been writing in strict metre. I eventually settled for the form of the Shakespearean sonnet. That's 14 lines. You've got one quatrain, another quatrain again, which has a change in it before it starts, and then you've got the final couplet in which you have to sum everything up. It's 14 lines. It advises to say a lot in a short time and not waste a moment. It's chiseling every word. So it's a little art, but it's coming fairly easily because the formation was there from the Welsh culture, both in English and in Welsh at home. So that's the atmosphere it was coming from. So it naturally came into sonnets. And therefore, they were there as a living diary, which started then way back when I was there in the early period, and carried on, except when I was told not to write. There was 2 years when I stopped writing. That carried on eventually until the present. So it's a diary in poetic form, which has gone into, therefore, well over 1,000 pages of poems. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's 3 volumes, big volumes, and it's now it's just been available on Amazon. So basically the whole story is there right through, with all the drama, ups and downs and in-betweens, because a moment will pass if it's not put down, and the grace and the joy will pass if it's not crystallized. You kind of fossilize time, and joys can live again pain can live again. But sometimes pain is actually more powerful than joy. There's a great writer in France, Chateaubriand. He said, "Le chant naturel de l'homme est triste." The natural chant, natural song of man is sad, and the minor key sometimes is more emotional than the major key, because by nature one is in one's truth in sadness. Funerals are sometimes more deep than marriages, for a priest.
You mentioned that you stopped writing for 2 years. What was going on during those 2 years?
That was when the drama happened, because what happened was the bishop, because a lot of it was in half an hour. I was writing a lot of Welsh as well, and because the bishop knew me and my family, he wanted that published in Welsh because of the testimony of that in a Protestant country, a Catholic verse, you see, in Welsh, natural Welsh. As well as a very Protestant country, there's not many Catholic writers there in Welsh, and so he wanted that, and then that's how the order realized this was going on, and so they wanted to see it and in translation have it. So what happened was the head of the order allowed one volume of the Welsh to be published, but nothing in English, and the Welsh had to be anonymous. But then the ultimatum came: you have to leave or stop writing. So what it was, I was pushed by my own prior, the local prior, to move on, but he could see that it was not exactly the charism of the order to be writing, and so that was the 2-year period there. I was also asked to stop, to burn or to destroy anything I wrote, but fortunately my father had already in his possession the manuscript, so that wasn't able to be carried out. And however, there was that pause when I obeyed. I was there for 2 years, and then when I came out of the order, I went back into La Trappe, which is it was slightly more open, and then from there I was transferred to the Irish monastery not far from here. So anyway, basically it's a long story, but the forestry carries it through.
I see. Well, I want to go back to stillness. Why do you believe people struggle with stillness today?
It's even more difficult today to be still. If you look at people and study their behavior, immediately when they're waiting for something or there's a pause, they go into their pocket and take up the mobile phone, which is now not just mine. I'm talking to you on an old Nokia, which is kind of medieval, but nowadays they have a Samsung thing which does everything for you. It's a whole television in your pocket, it's a computer in your pocket, it's everything in your pocket, it's the whole world in your pocket. So they take that to bed with them. And even married people who take it to bed with them, and that thing is more important than the wife. Think about how can God get into that mess? It's crowding out the voice of God. So without all that mess, one can hear far more the still small voice. People are handicapped. People are crippled out there in the world. They're hyped up. They can't be still. The great French philosopher Blaise Pascal said, tout le malheur de l'homme réside dans le fait qu'il n'arrive pas à s'asseoir dans une pièce et ne rien faire. All the misery of man resides in the fact that he can't sit alone in a room and do nothing.
And what do you feel like we're losing besides, hearing that still small voice, hearing the unctions from God, the warnings, the subtle reassurances, the subtle encouragement, the subtle, what are you doing, besides all of that, what are we losing by constantly moving?
The truth is that man is no longer self-sufficient. He is a cripple, and the fact that he's not able just to be alone is a real tragedy for humanity. The quality of life has deteriorated because man is no longer able to hear the beauty of simple things. He has to be hyped up by big impulses. It's not the best way to be. In solitude and silence, a little thing goes a long way. A book is hugely powerful. The sound of music is extremely moving. People are completely dulled and dumbed down by the number of impulses. They are actually impoverished humanly, and their memory too has weakened because there are too many syllables coming in. Man, way back, had a stronger memory. He read more, and he maintained and retained what he was reading. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of unnecessary syllables in the air doing us harm. We're saturated with syllables and meanings and sounds.
How can someone begin to reclaim that space?
If a person wants to find both himself and God, and actually also his neighbor, he has to simplify life. Life simplified. The beauty of simple things, e.g., having the phone off, except maybe once a day to catch up on everything in one go. It's a completely different day. Having access, availability all the time to all the world is a very different mode of being. And one goes through life and will come to the end of one's life. Where did my life go? It went to immediate availability. It went into being called by everything that was calling. Or if one can come to the end of one's life, I lived. I lived independently. I was not controlled. I was in control of my life. That one can actually claim. It's called being in complete control of one's day. It can be done. One doesn't have to be always with people, and people don't have to be always in our head. There are ways and means of structuring one's day. If one wants to, one can, and not going to everything. You have to say yes to everything, every meeting, every encounter, every conversation, every bit of stuff coming at the screen. You don't have to have all that. A day with a book is quiet. A day with a screen is noisy.
Mm. And faith in your writing feels lived, not explained. When did faith become real for you personally?
The encounter with the Lord happened, well, the family was always a Christian family, so there was the chapel out there. I was brought up as a Welsh Baptist, and I was going to be a Baptist minister as a result of getting involved with evangelicals when I was in school. There was a whole lot of stuff going on, actually, in the 60s in Britain. Billy Graham came to Britain, and there was a massive crusade there in 1967. That had an effect, but already before then I was involved, and I was going more and more towards the evangelicals, and my own pastor stopped me and had a good chat, and he realized what I was going to go if he didn't stop me. So anyway, I stayed in the Baptist church. He baptized me in Welsh, of course, but then what happened was, because I was then going towards the ministry, I was reading a lot, and I actually got involved accidentally with the Catholic Church. I remember being deeply moved by going into a Catholic church and going to a high mass one Sunday morning. I was about 13 or 14, no, what was I, 14 I would say, and it was still in there, the high mass, and I was very, very moved by the mystery of it. So I had to think, what's going on here? There's far more history and mystery in their thing than in ours. So I went more and more towards the Catholic Church, and then the vocation followed. So the local Catholic Church, which I was going to then from 15 or so onwards, 16, was the Catholic Church run by Ampleforth, Benedictine therefore. It was in Cardiff, and there were 6 or 7 monks there from Ampleforth, one from Buckfast, and they got me involved with the Benedictine world. So my vocation also matured under them, because they were very good, actually. They had a semi-monastic life in their mission. There were 120 monks in the community, and they had 6 or 7 of them in Cardiff with their own monastic life as well there. But they're very good pastors as well, and great liturgy. So I was born along the waves of vocation in a good parish community, nourished by the spirituality of Ampleforth.
Yes. Your poetry spans over 40 years. That is amazing. How has your voice evolved over time?
How has the actual texture of the content there evolved? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Well, you see, the thing, because, it's a long story, but there's a gap when I went back to my studies, and then things go there in a different mode there. Although actually that was quite a rich experience, because you were doing theology in Bangor with other students, future ministers and so on. That was a very rich experience. And back to the Welsh culture, doing theology in Welsh. See, I could have stayed put there, and a lot was going on there as well, because there was a move to get something started in Wales itself. And also the involvement with the huge charismatic renewal in the monastic world in France. That's all there as well, seeing miracles happening before one's eyes. There was a massive renewal in France in the mid-80s, and I was involved in it. We were hoping to bring that back to Wales at one point. And all that is in there as well, the amazing things that were going on. In the charismatic renewal there in the monastic world, they were opening monasteries at the rate of 2 monasteries a year, and it was very powerful. So there was an attempt to found one in Wales. All that is in there as well, what happened in those amazing years of oscillation. But then it calmed down eventually. My spiritual father sent me back to Ireland, and I was sorted out here. Although I had to go for a while actually to Italy. That's when I was ordained, Rome and so on. All that is in there as well, the attraction of Italy. See, there's a lot of moving around there within the monastic world. So the whole story is there day by day.
And in Volume 2, it reflects transition and renewal. What triggered that shift in your life?
Yeah, so that was the period then, Volume 2, there's a lot happening there. It could have gone either way. Lots of things could have happened. Well, to be honest, things which could have happened didn't happen because there was not an awful lot of encouragement from bishops and that kind of thing. You see, they were very chary about anything new of that nature, and so I accepted that it wasn't a divine will. But I think it's an awful pity, because we see there are lost vocations, Welsh-speaking vocations. There are Welsh priests out there, but we've gone elsewhere, out of the country, whereas Wales could have harnessed all that and got a good foundation in the heart of the Welsh language area of Wales. That had a huge influence on Wales, but it didn't happen because the bishops weren't too keen on risking anything.
Absolutely. And I'm not trying to go back to Volume 1, but I do want to ask about how your relationship with God evolved since Volume 1.
It's become more Dominican insofar as I took on board his teaching. St. Dominic, as it's crystallized in the teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the greatest Dominicans of all time, he has his teaching, that is Thomas Aquinas, he analyzes the whole structure of the religious life, and he says, in conclusion, it is better to give light and warmth than just to be a light. In other words, it's contemplari et contemplata aliis tradere, to contemplate and to give unto others the things contemplated. Because I do have one Holy Mass in public a week. It's the Latin one on a Sunday, and there that will be partly recorded and transmitted. And the teaching going out on YouTube, it's Lectio Divina on a daily basis, that does actually reach quite a few souls, and therefore there's an element of sharing what is coming. So that wouldn't have been there certainly in the Carthusian period, except perhaps in the writing. It was stuck, of course. So if to answer your question, there would be an evolution there. Also, since ordination, that happened in 1997, since ordination, by the very fact of being a priest, one is a man for others, even though it's based basically in the monastic life and in contemplation, in my case. Nevertheless, if one is a priest, one is ordained to give the sacraments, and therefore one has a lot of confession, which of course wouldn't have happened in the Carthusian order at all. And certainly preaching wouldn't either. So there's been an element of giving what has been received.
In Volume 3, it continues your journey. What new depths does this volume explore?
Yeah, in Volume 3, things go towards the eremitic life purely because the whole thing is calmed down. There, a certain peace and serenity comes because once the bishop took me on board, things became clearer. You see, I've been seeing the bishop every month all these years, and he would come here every beginning of every month for years and years and years, and then now he's got too old. He's retired now, and I go to him because he doesn't drive anymore. But it's still happening. He stabilized me. He was a good father, and that's what a bishop, a real bishop is, a good father, not just an administrator, but somebody who cares, who listens, and who gives you good advice. So he was giving me good advice. So when I was under him, I was safe. And that, by the way, is a hint for anyone who's listening. Find a good spiritual father and you're safe.
All right, so as we draw to an end here, at the core of everything that you've written, what is the one truth about the human soul people overlook?
The fact that it is indestructible is the difference between the soul and the body, which is its envelope, is that the body is material and therefore destined to go into the destruction of the material in death. It'll be dissolved. But the soul does not depend on the body for its functioning. The proof is that when people have death experiences and come back, they'll tell you that the body has been there, they've looked at the body, and they've been going on. It's a separate existence. The soul, therefore, is immaterial, and all that's immaterial is not limited by the material, and therefore by death. It can't stop being. Once a soul is ignited and conceptual, the parents create, that is, procreate, but there's a sacrality about the moment of starting off a new life, which is divine. They collaborate with the Creator, because the Creator sparks a new soul into being at every conception, and therefore implants an immortal soul into what is mortal. What is immaterial is linked for a while to the material, but is not going to be limited by it. So that soul is what we call Eve eternal. Now, an Evum is a span of time, and eternitas is an eternity. An angel, anything outside God, which is of an immaterial nature, an angel, or a demon, which is a fallen angel, or a human soul, has had a beginning, but will have no end. It cannot end because it's immaterial, it's spiritual, and it has to go on. And therefore, the big issue is caring not for what is going to perish and go back into dust, but for the bit that's going to go on. And that's where people get it wrong. They give great care to the body, and beauty is very important, but the beauty of the soul is neglected. And that's the one thing that counts. Because, as I said earlier on, the one tragedy is not to make it, not to get to heaven, to lose one's soul. And that's where the devil is busy, making sure that no one is thinking about the real thing. The crunch is one moment after death. Have I made it? There's a cross here, an old cross just nearby in Newgrange. It's not Newgrange, Monaster Boyce. It's very, very old, and it has on it, these old Celtic crosses with the gospel on them. They're ancient crosses, high crosses. Well, there, in that old monastery, there's a soul in the scales, all nude, and he's a bit nervous. He's not quite sure which way it's going to go, up or down. And it's forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. He's nervous. So that's what people should be concerned about. The big thing, the crunch, one moment after death. Am I ready to go or not?
Am I ready to go or not? That is the question. That is the question. I get that some people feel like it's a fantasy.
That is a big trick of the enemy. They think that by arguing against it, they can cancel it. Well, one can't. What is in the brain is in the brain. What is out there, even after death, even if it's invisible, is out there. And whether one believes in it or not, it doesn't make any difference. It's there.
It is there. It is there. All right. Father David Jones, where can people purchase the book and find out more information on the internet?
Yeah, they want you to go on Amazon. It goes anywhere they want to just go into Amazon for the David Jones. Now, the actual title it's Latin. I'll explain the title if you want to. Ad Maiestatem, A-D, add to Maiestatem or Majestatem, but it's nigh in Latin. It looks like Majestatem, but Maiestatem, towards the majesty. Now, that's the title that one uses in the monastic life in choir. When the choir facing not the other choir, but facing the altar, it's turned towards the majesty. So basically, it's in two words, the whole thrust of it. All one's life is towards the praise of glory.
I love it. Love that title, too. You said that is Latin?
Yeah, it's an old term. And as it happens, it was published, the start of it anyway, when Prince Charles was crowned King of England. So I sent him the first copy, more or less, because I wanted also, is it corresponding, it's classed as the High King, but he's serving the King, the High King. The King of England has to serve the King of Glory, and with his Christian roots, he's aware of that. So I gave him that, and he wrote back, and he was quite pleased. He was touched by the fact that it'd been dedicated to him. So there's an element there of something happening as well, the crowning of the King of England, who is at the service of the King of Glory.
That is amazing. Wow. Okay, thanks for sharing that. All right, listeners, just in case you need those links, I know you will. I have all 3 links to the volumes, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, so that you can keep up to date with the release of Volume 3 and also pick up Volume 1 and 2. All right, this conversation wasn't loud, but it was very powerful, because sometimes the most changing truths don't come through noise, they come through stillness. Father David Jones reminds us that meaning isn't something you chase, it's something you uncover when you finally slow down enough to see it. So tap in with Ad Maiestatem Trilogy, following his journey online, and take a moment today not to rush, but to reflect, because in that quiet space, you might just find something eternal waiting for you. This isn't radio, this is revival. All right. Thank you, Father David. It was a pleasure.
God bless you, and God bless your ministry.
Thank you so much. God bless you and your ministry.
Good. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Peace to all. My name is Whodini, and I am the host of Vigilantes Radio Live. I think that we are beyond just asking cool questions and getting cool responses. I think that we are here as creatives to provide an example that you can do things different outside of expectations, because some of us simply were not born into the club, but there is perhaps a door, window, or back gate that we can leave a clue for you to get into. Life is short, but there are plenty of moments to try and get it right. Pursuing your dreams and learning from mistakes may be tough, but regret is tougher. To book your interview, email us at vradio@onlyonemediagroup.com. That's a V as in victorious. Or visit onlyonemediagroup.com. I'm counting on you. Heaven, we all are counting on you to step into your purpose and your passion. You are listening to Vigilantes Radio Live on iHeartRadio, providing you with an opportunity to dive deeper.
You are now listening to Vigilantes Radio, the people's choice for quality interviews, art, music, and hot topics. Hosted by Demetrius Whodini Blak Reynolds. All episodes of this podcast are available for free download at www.onlyonemediagroup.com.